Guys, thank you so much for joining. This is happy New Year also to both of you and to everybody on the call. It's I love New Year's Eve as a great time to like reflect on the year that passed and to look forward to the year ahead. So do you guys do New Year's resolutions or are those out? Or we're doing something else these days?
I don't know. I've always felt the New Year's resolutions were a little bit funny because it's like I'm gonna try to be a better person one day a year. You know what I mean? It's like
It's a commitment. It's a commitment for the year ahead.
oh, well, but like
Best case
you
scenario.
don't need a day to do that. You can just do that any like you should do that, like
I agree.
once a week instead of like once a year. Just constantly be self-reflective and say like, how can I improve myself as a person? Maybe it's losing weight. That's a kind of like common one thing, but maybe it's just being less of a dick, or I don't know, being more charitable. I don't know. I mean, whatever an individual feels like they can change for themselves.
All right. Awesome. So Chad B 2022, more charitable, less of a dick.
Yeah, less of a dick.
Awesome. And on-chain puppy innovation is really the big vision
that's
for 2022.
that's my focus for the next. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Love it. And actually, we're remiss not to. I love to do this, even though it's not totally necessary all the time. But let's give like a real quick introductions to each of us. Chad, do you want to kick us off? Familiar Cow,
Yeah,
run it up next.
I'll kick off, I suppose. Yeah, so my name is Chad Barraford. I'm a core dev. I've been in the project since the very beginning. I think I committed the first lines of code of THORChain, of the Thor core protocol. So I've been there for quite a long time. And I sometimes come out into the public to discuss the project and to educate and inform and answer questions and advocate for the importance of this protocol.
Awesome. And we appreciate you for it. Thank you, Chad. And Mr. Cow.
Yo, I'm FamiliarCow. I'm a community member. I make sneakers that look like THORChain, and I do Twitter Spaces and random stuff here and there.
A very awesome creator, and Chad and I both are recipients of some of these Thor Force ones. They're these customized Nike Air Force ones in the Thor changing theme, and they're incredible. So appreciate you for it, Mr. Cal. And I'm Xerox Saigon, founder of runebase.org, a site dedicated towards like education and onboarding into the THORChain ecosystem, and also co-founder of THORGuard's NFT project. And yeah, and today, so Cal, what's on the menu for today? What are we getting into?
We got the 2021 recap of everything that's all the major events that have happened in the THORChain ecosystem in all of 2021, going from February to today, December 31st.
Awesome. And Familiar Cow started this outline, and then one of our team members on the Runebase side, shout out to 0xJet, helped flesh out some additions as well. And we thought it'd be cool. There's actually a lot. There's like we put together a doc here, and there's, I don't know, 4 pages or something, and it's a lot. It's too much to go over. We scheduled 90 minutes for this thing. Probably, I don't know if we're going to get through literally everything, but I think what we're looking forward to doing was basically running through this list and then getting color and perspective from Chad and getting a bit of the inside behind the curtains look at what things were like, on the at the development team level. And yeah, just to kind of get some of that reflection on 2021, and then maybe what we can do next week is talk about the things that we're excited about in 2022 and what THORChain will look like going forward. It sound good, Mr. B? Anything you'd like to add? Any other end of year reflections you'd like to work into the process?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
No, we'll just go. I'm sure we're going to have way less time than things to talk about, probably. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have no issue.
Tends to be the case. Well, 2021 was a wild year for crypto more broadly and THORChain specifically, and started off with a series of really just great launches as we went from single chain chaos net, right? Like or single chain mainnet with just on the Binance chain into multi-chain for the first time. So, Cal, you want to kick us off with the first thing on the list here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first major thing, this is only in February, but the multi-chain testnet went live on February 8th. So that's like the first major like development, I guess, in that. I mean, it wasn't the multi-chain chaos net, but the testnet went live in February. So yeah, Chad, what was going on in the team around February?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was super exciting for us for sure. Single chain KSNet was there to kind of prove that the economics work more than anything else, probably prove the technology works. And if you could swap with just one chain, then there's no reason why you couldn't do with any others. And so multi-chain testnet was when we were first able to go live with interacting with Ethereum and Bitcoin and Litecoin and these other chains. And so it was kind of like it was really super exciting because it was like kind of the precursor of like, okay, we're so close to actually like delivering on the vision of, the original white paper of like what this thing is. And so we were super excited about it. And so of course we ran there for, I think like a month or two, I think it was, whatever it was. To kind of give it some time for the community to kind of blast on it and see if they could find any issues or bugs or what have you. But in the end, it went very smoothly for the most part, which I was super excited about.
What about before the launch? Was there like what was the feeling like before the launch? Like how long did it take to get up to that point where you're ready to release it?
To the testnet launch?
Yeah.
Yeah, almost I think it was probably a few months into single chain KSNet, we actually created an entire different branch in GitLab that was for multi-chain. And we did that in part because we realized that we wanted to use a native asset. Because in the original design, we weren't going to use a native asset. We were just going to keep it the BEP2 asset in the very early kind of designs. But then we were like, it's much more efficient, it's much more effective, there's more things we can do, it's much more powerful if we just switch BEP2 over to our own native asset, which in itself was going to be like a complicated thing to do. And we certainly didn't want to take the current single chain KSNet and like convert that chain over to multi-chain, because then you have to like support different types of rune, and that would have just made everything a lot more complicated and a lot more dangerous. And so we just were like, we don't want to do that, let's just create an entirely separate chain. And so we spent months and months and months working on that aspect to it, working on like single-sided adding liquidity. Like there's a bunch of features and functionality that were present in multi-chain that were not present in single chain. But we wanted to make sure that when we launched multi-chain that it had pretty much a complete feature set that you can from the adding liquidity, remove liquidity, swapping, all those kind of things. And so that took months and months and months of building and testing and trying out and making sure it's all pretty good and solid. Yeah.
Awesome. And just for context here, we don't want to focus too much on price, but I think it's interesting to track this over the course of the year. At the beginning of the year, as THORChain went from single chain like BEP swap into multi-chain testnet around February, Rune was trading around like 130, 180. And so it was wee early days for the Rune token.
For sure.
And as we crossed into February, two features that make THORChain stand out amongst other LP opportunities. One of them is impermanent loss protection. This model where like anybody that's provided liquidity into LPs is familiar with the anxiety of potentially losing out on them through what's called impermanent loss, which is where the opportunity cost of just holding the two assets outperforms if those two assets diverge in price too much while you have an LP position and the rewards don't account for the potential loss. So impermanent loss protection, and then synthetic asset design was finalized. Can you talk a bit about the synthetic asset design? What is that, and what do we have to look forward to with that design as it comes to production?
Yeah, so we wanted to have the code of synthetics into multi-chain at the time we launched it, just so that we didn't have to make any like large changes in the back end of a live network, just to kind of it just felt more safe to do it that way. And so we did it that way. So synthetics allows the network to be able to, because the network has an AMM built into its core protocol, it always knows the price of any asset, right, that's on the network. Unlike Ethereum, right? Ethereum doesn't know the price of, UST or whatever, like it in the ERC20s. It doesn't have that built into the core protocol. And so because of that, we can actually generate assets on THORChain that always kind of price-wise move with its underlying linked asset. And so synthetics kind of is kind of the doorway into an entire new concept of what we call THORFi, which allows us to do not just to use this as an AMM, but to do all sorts of things that nobody else can do in the industry, right? Even just like if you think about like lending, just taking lending by itself and you add the cross-chain concept on top of it is like that by itself is like a monumental shift, right? Especially when you're talking about like supporting Bitcoin, which is like obviously the biggest and most important asset in crypto by like a long shot, right? And yet it's so kind of forgotten in terms of the rest of the DeFi space, and for good reason, because it's not built on an EVM, so it's hard to interface with and interact with, which is why it took us years of work and effort to build this thing, right? I remember talking to Robert Leshner from Compound, and they were talking about like lending and doing like a cross chain thing, and they were going to only do EVM based chains. I remember I asked him like, so why didn't you do Bitcoin? Because it's obviously like a really important asset, and he was just like, well, it's just really hard. And I was like, well, yeah, yes, it is really hard, but that's what people want. That's what the industry obviously needs. So I'm super excited that synthetics allows us to get to that place where we can actually do like layer one Bitcoin loans. And to be clear, like when we're lending out layer one Bitcoin, we're actually laying out layer one native Bitcoin, and synthetics is used as part of the process of doing so. Anyways, so synthetics was a huge concept and a very important kind of fundamental pillar of the network's design in order to get us further down the road of giving even more powerful and functional things within DeFi that we are uniquely positioned to do it at. No other chain in the space, no other DeFi protocol in the space is even remotely capable of actually executing on. And so synthetics was that kind of door where we needed to get there.
I think it's crazy that the synthetic asset design was finalized in February, and you know what I mean? It's just just seems like it's so long ago that we're looking forward to seeing synthetics.
Yeah, it's been like on the roadmap forever, and we've had it like it's in the code. It's been actually live since we launched multi-chain. And it's been unchanged too, other than like maybe a couple of small bugs that we discovered. But like it's the same exact design as it was before. And the only reason why it's not like launch is because we've been focused on stability and security over the last few months over synthetics.
Yeah. So the next thing that we have on the list here, April 13th, 2021. Infamous day, the multi-chain chaos net launch. That was the actual launch of when people were able to first add liquidity to the network. So that must have been just a crazy awesome time, just getting really, really pumped up for
absolutely.
Just the network going live.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. And my daughter was born shortly after, and so that was an insane time for me. Where I had like two really good reasons of why I wasn't sleeping. One was the network. One was my daughter screaming in another room, or the same room actually. But yeah, that was such a moment, And I remember what was funny about it was I think it was like the day of or the day before Coinbase had their IPO. And like,
yeah, it was right then.
Like everybody was kind of like tweeting and talking about Coinbase and the first cryptocurrency company goes IPO, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And I remember I was talking to Eric Voorhees from Shapeshift, and he was just saying how like everybody's talking about Coinbase, but like I think in the future people will look back and say like that like the monumental shift was the launch of Bitcoin and support for Bitcoin, cross-chain swapping, and all this kind of stuff. And even the Shapeshift themselves, like literally the same day that we launched, they ripped out their entire back and replaced it with THORChain on day one. They didn't even want to wait a few weeks or months or whatever to like for the network to prove itself. They were just so, balls in, ready to go, like super bullish on the concept that they were like, we can get rid of KYC within Shapeshift. Let's fucking do this. Like, let's LFG, right? Let's fucking go. And so they were like, day one, they were like, let's go all in on this thing. And I was like, all right, man, let's do it.
It's actually kind of poetic that the ChaosNet would go live the week that Coinbase kind of gets its shares out there to like retail almost dumps it on retail investors with how much they're asking for for their IPO. So it's kind of crazy that the decentralized version comes out like the same week, basically.
Yeah, it's a bit comical to me because congrats to Coinbase and all that stuff, but you've moved further down the corporate entity line of traditional finance, which, to be honest, just doesn't really always excite me all that much personally. I'm more excited about what we can do in the new this new financial system, and providing a mechanism for people to move across chains in a completely trustless way without requiring permission or being censored or anything. Things like that's, to me, is like hands down so much bigger news than a company went IPO and they happen to sell Bitcoin. Like, that's just, to me, it's like, whatever, fine. I mean, congrats and all, but I really don't care that much, to be honest. I'm more excited about actually implementing something that is desperately needed. And I always say a hair on fire problem of being able to move across chains completely trustlessly without requiring some sort of bridge to maintain the price of your wrapped asset or some horse shit. It's just, to me it's fairly obvious.
Mm-hmm. And around the time that multi-chain ChaosNet launched and the Coinbase IPO occurred, there was a good a tweet that I saw. It might have been Vance Spencer, I think a VC in the space. And he said, Coinbase in 5 years, likely it'll be, I'm going to paraphrase here, but fiat on and off ramps, dealing with regulatory issues locally, but backing up to decentralized liquidity, essentially. And I think I think that kind of makes sense in my mind. As a global cross-chain liquidity protocol grows, it'll suck up all the liquidity in the ecosystem, and over time, centralized exchanges will have no choice but to tap into that. I mean, it'll be there waiting for them.
If you look at centralized services like Coinbase and Kraken and stuff, they offer lending and yield and all this kind of stuff, which is peanuts relative to what you see in the DeFi space. If you look at BlockFi, they produce revenue using GBDC, which is a very unreliable mechanism to generate income for the interest accounts on BlockFi. So what are they going to do? I mean, I think in the long term, once we get further down the road of maturity on THORChain's case, that I think the natural thing to do is just to instead of using GBDC, just put some Bitcoin in the Bitcoin pool and just generate yield from the swaps. You're going to get much more yield for one thing and much more consistent yield too. So it is not much of a downside from my perspective, at least.
And so multi-chain ChaosNet went live in April, and that takes us into early summer. On the back of multi-chain ChaosNet, the Rune price went from about $5 in April to up to a high of about $20 right around mid to late May. So explosive time for the THORChain community. And then that takes us into June. And in June, a couple of things happened. THORName service, the pre-sale launch. So the THORSwap team helped execute the pre-sale of THORNames in June. And this is where we start to see some of the ecosystem products starting to take shape. And then also in June, towards late June, there was an ETH parsing error and exploit. And then, Chad, you want to talk about what occurred there, and then and what was the solution to that?
Sorry, I'm paused. I'm mute. For the ETH parsing one.
Yeah,
that was basically somebody created an ERC20 that pretended to be ETH. That's it in a nutshell. Which was literally a one-line change to fix.
Okay. Oh, and this was against the backdrop of I think right at end of May, a macro correction in the broader crypto markets. So I forget exactly, the price action that like ETH or Bitcoin took, but even before there were any issues on in THORChain, like there was this macro correction, and that set the stage for, I would say, a pretty rough summer for most of crypto and THORChain as well. So ETH parsing error and exploit took us into July, and Cal, you can kick it off from there.
Yeah, well, I think we know the story of what happened at the beginning of July with see, what is that? The ERC 777 bug, and basically there was those two exploits that happened in July. So yeah, just you want to take us through what happened there again? I'm sure we've all like heard about this, but do you want to like summarize?
Yeah, the 777 was a bug in the ETH router itself, the smart contract, where it basically allowed a reentrancy, a reentrancy attack. And so a white hat found that and basically took up all the funds just to secure them, and then sent them back to the network minus a fee.
Cool. There were three over the course of July: the 777 bug, and then two different incidents involving the ETH chain, and it was this was a tough period for the THORChain community and the THORChain ecosystem, and because of the sequential order. But looking back on a few things here, and then as we get out of July into August, and we see the initiatives that took place to harden the network, and then also it occurred to me there was Wrecked News covered some of this, but at the just earlier today or yesterday they had a leaderboard for all the exploits in DeFi this year. I mean, they listed out the top 20, and actually very little funds were actually lost in any of these exploits, and nothing was lost by any of the users, swappers, or liquidity providers or nodes. Everything was covered by the treasury. And so THORChain, none of these exploits in sum total made any of the wrecked leaderboards. But that took us, I think it was 3 in July, the ETH parsing error in June. And then that takes us to August, where we see all of these initiatives to strengthen and harden the network.
So these exploits were relatively small in terms of the quantity of funds taken, and that's largely in part because the network was in chaos net, and the liquidity was capped, and so there wasn't as much funds to take, and that was designed on purpose that way, right? We wanted to launch this into like a beta status and kind of tame down. That was all done intentionally, and it ended up working out very well. I mean, if we didn't do that, if we kind of YOLO'd our way into the whole system, then we probably would have lost more funds, and the treasury would have lost even more funds than it did in the end. So we're kind of proved ourselves to be correct in terms of being cautious and being guarded in terms of the way we launch things. And since then, we've seen obviously like these massive attacks of like whether it be Poly network or Compound or what was it, Badger, like all these things were like 110, 120 plus $1 million.
Yeah, Poly and Compound are number 1 and 3 on the leaderboard. I'm looking at this, and I don't think THORChain would have made top 30 on this list, which is actually
I don't even think it even makes top 70, to be honest with you. If you look at the whole thing, it's really, relatively speaking, it's rather small.
Oh, here it is, number 49. So okay,
oh yeah,
it's it's up there.
It's yeah, and honestly, we'll move down that line over time. To be honest,
yeah,
like I said, we're just gonna see more with it. But like that was all done, somewhat on purpose to have that kind of guarded launch, which obviously made a lot of sense, to improve the correct thing to do, But after that point, like we kind of realized that there's something wrong with the ETH implementation, because we kept on seeing these ETH related issues, and that's why the network decided to the community especially pushed for the idea of let's just put things on pause, let's pause the network and do an analysis, all these kind of things. And then the team brought in like multiple external teams to do audits, which they found nothing. And then not nothing, but nothing important, nothing critical. Like
it's the next thing on the timeline, August 3rd. So this is like there's basically like exploits in July, like the network goes down, and the next thing that happens basically in the ecosystem is Nine Realms announces THORSec, basically like Halborn comes in, THORSec becomes a thing. So
Trail of Bits came in. Yeah, so that was great because we then had I don't know how many odds were actually done in the end. I've literally lost count. There was 2 external, a few internal, and then some like kind of friends of friends kind of doing it as well in a sense. We're like non-official audits in a sense. So the point was to get as many eyes as possible on this code base, because it is a very large code base, much larger than anything else in the space, or at least most things in the space. And so it is a lot more difficult to not only write and secure, but also to audit as well. And so we wanted to the more eyes, the better. Like this, so we just pulled every string we could pull. And thankfully, Nine Realms, played a significant role in that and helping to bring in some of the best minds. Like, we have a dedicated THORChain team of guys who've been, hacking on DeFi for years and been very successful at that. We even recently brought in a couple months ago the guy who like broke Geth. I had that huge exploit on Ethereum a few months ago. He came in to do some fuzzy security testing on our code bases. So it's been an ongoing effort. It's not something we just did for like a few days or a few weeks, whatever. Like, it's still happening today. We're still bringing in more people to give it a deeper and deeper and deeper look at the code base. We're always kind of just making the assumption that there's more things to be found, and because you cannot assume that there isn't. So we just constantly are like just looking for more people to be involved with it. I'm always encouraging people that I know in the space to give it a look, or give it a gander, so to speak. It's just been going on nonstop for months on end, literally.
Mm-hmm. And through this period, July into August, the chain was halted. There was no like swaps, no LP actions. The nodes were frozen. And the first step towards, we called it like the road back to mainnet, was first THORChain resuming block production. That happened August 10th, and then August 18th, single chain ChaosNet Ragnarok is completed. Actually, that's actually independent of this. August 22nd, sorry, THORChain resumes rune transfers. So you can talk a bit about like the strategy from after, in the wake of the exploits, things are halted, things are paused, and then initiatives are put in place to pen test and audit different parts of the network, and then going from there to resuming block production and then resuming rune transfers. What were give us a little bit of insight into like what were the different stages why resume block production first and then rune transfers after, and then swapping and other actions later?
Well, so we want to resume block production as soon as reasonably possible, so that the network is producing block rewards, and so everybody who's got capital in the system, either on the bond side or the pool side, that you're still making some kind of income from all that. Just kind of have your funds kind of frozen and nothing you can do about it, and that you can't even pull them out either. So we wanted to at least give some people, at least some benefit, some yield. So you want to get that thing back online as relatively as quick as possible, with maintaining safety and all that kind of stuff. So that was the first part, and that required a bunch of audits from a bunch of different teams to look at a certain smaller scope of the code base to make sure that these code paths are safe and reliable and secure and all these kind of things. But at that point, there's very little risk of like exploits at that point, because if the only thing you're doing is producing blocks and you're not allowed to transact at all, then there's not really much input that you can manipulate to get some sort of desired output. So it was very little risk to do it from my perspective, but we still required multiple teams to verify that.
Cool, very cool. Cal?
Yeah, so you kind of brushed over the single chain ChaosNet Ragnarok, but that's actually kind of interesting how basically the chain like demolished itself from and returned all the funds to everybody. But it was kind of interesting and like very slow. It's not like everyone got their funds back like in a big block. Like people got 5,000 rune in a single transaction. So so what happened with the Ragnarok of single chain?
Yeah, so the concept of Ragnarok was this idea early on that the network will basically self-implode and send everybody's funds in a crazy scenario, right? And it's intended if if everybody just kind of leaves the network in terms of the validators, that once you're getting close to like losing Byzantine fault tolerance, which is like I think 4 nodes, the network says it's no longer going to be secure to maintain these funds. So let's just just everybody withdraws, including the validators themselves, and so everybody gets their funds back. And that's the kind of the safety kind of trigger on the whole network that it's capable of returning everybody's funds in some crazy edge case scenario. So we should never see this in reality, other than the intended purpose of destroying single chain. Hopefully, we'll never do this again. But in the act of doing so, we learn a bunch of things, and partially the chain got into some kind of wacky scenario where it just took so long to generate a single block that it just slowed everything up a lot slower than intended. So it just took a lot longer than we wanted it to take. And once we fixed those bugs in single chain, it just sped up a lot faster, and everything was just kind of done within a few hours. I think moving forward, though, the code changes we made in multi-chains, if we ever see this again, it'll be a lot faster. It should be about 20 times faster. And multi-chain.
How long did it take before? It was a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, I think I think a week or two or something like that. I think it was about 2 weeks it took, and that's all because there was just some like a few edge case bugs that just kind of slowed the process up, and we just patched those as we went along, and everything was fine. Like it wasn't so much of a big deal, but yeah, I think now if we were to rock like multi-chain today, it would only take like a day or two, I would think.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, it's good to see that progress of the ecosystem, and also on the topic of progress in the ecosystem here, as we transitioned from August into September, we start to see a lot of action in above the protocol level, different interfaces, exchange interfaces, our Launchpad, etc. Starting to come to life. And so one of the first things that we see here in September, Sweep DEX rebrands to DeFi Spot. DeFi Spot, as everyone knows, is seeking to become like the Coinbase of DeFi, like a really simple user interface that builds on top of and backs up to THORChain on the back end for LP and for swap actions. So DeFi Spot rebrand occurs, and then that takes us
10 out of 10 rebrand. By the way, that first name was just terrible. Oh my god,
it was tough.
DeFi Spot 10. That's a 100 out of 100 name. I love that name. Yep. Swipe, or I don't even know how you pronounce it.
Like, Sweep, I believe. Yeah.
You gotta love it though. Thanks, DeFi Spot. Oh, I also forgot to mention, like I didn't even put in here that THORstarter launched in I believe the end of June, right?
Yeah.
So that became a thing not long after. Shortly before, and then they had their first IDOs around this time, around end of September, October.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Shout out to THORstarter. Awesome. And then that takes us into September. And what else happens in September? Cow.
Oh yes. Well, all the chains started getting re-enabled. So as part of the restoration of the chain, right? First we had block production, and then it was just transfers of native rune, and then the chain started being enabled one by one after audit. So it started with Binance on September 17th, September 28th, Litecoin 30th. Native Bitcoin. So that was basically September was just network recovery. We didn't see ETH yet, but all the other major chains besides ETH were re-enabled.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just add a little color there. So Binance was first because that's the one that we've had the most experience with, starting with single chain, and that's also like the simplest and most smallest surface area in terms of the security risks around it, because Binance has no EVM layer to it, has no contracting layer to it, so it's basically impossible to manipulate transactions or this kind of thing. And so we wanted to start something simple, something relatively easy, and that was Binance, and we just required all the different teams that were auditing to kind of check those code paths and make sure everything was on the up and up. And so they were able to do that. So we would start with Binance, and then we went to Litecoin and Bitcoin, because those two are also very relatively a lower risk. And then obviously the ETH was like the big one, the one that we were most concerned about from a security perspective. And so we wanted to say that for last, is to spend the most amount of time so that all the teams can have as much time as we could possibly give them, or as much time as they wanted to validate those implementations and make sure that everything was safe and secure.
Mm-hmm. ETH and ERC20 trading were re-enabled separately, though, right?
I think we did both at the same time. If I'm not mistaken, I think we did both at the same time. But the thing was, like, there was this debate within the community around,
that's what it was.
Should we even do ERC20s, right? Because this is the act of supporting ERC20s. This increases the surface area that we need to protect against, right? And if you're just transferring ETH from one address to another address, and there's not really much, not a lot of opportunity there for attack. It's much simpler to protect yourself against. But I always was pushing against this notion because I always wanted to make sure we don't let kind of the fear dictate our policy or dictate our vision, right? Or our execution paths. And so I kind of pushed hard on the idea that we maintain ERC20s, and there was definitely debates within the core team as well as within the community. And in the end, I think people decided to stick with ERC20 because there's so many valuable assets that we wanted to make sure we supported, like, stable coins, for example, like UST, USDC, DAI, and these kind of things are just as important to have in THORChain as ETH itself is, So we were able to maintain it, and, knock on wood, we haven't had an issue since.
Awesome. Yeah, and I love that perspective, not letting fear dictate, the roadmap. But then also going back to what you said earlier about, like, why do cross-chain in the first place, despite the fact that it's hard? It's what people need. It's what people want. And, ERC20s are part of, what people want, what people need out of this service. So, so now we're into October, right before Halloween, October 27th. Our friends at Veneer Threads launch and complete their THORForce 1 Dutch auction for 10 pairs. We have the Lord of Veneer Threads himself on the call. So, FamiliarCow, what was this like for you launching and completing your first auction for the first 10 pairs?
That was just incredible. Like, seeing that, the community was responsive to them. I just want to get them out to the people. So that was like what I was leading up to, was just actually getting pairs out to the people. So, thank anyone that bought from that auction. And I'm also sorry if I forgot your project on here, but I included mine. Like, we'll let you go up on that at the end after we get through the timeline.
What are you talking about? THORGuard?
No. If anyone, I'm sure there's someone. You forgot this like important development on May 14th, 2021. I'm sorry. We'll let you up.
There's a lot going on.
I know. There's that's the thing. There's so much going on, and anyone can really just make something that would make it onto this timeline. But there's just like so much surface area that there is to talk about. So, which is actually it's just crazy how big this ecosystem is. Anyone could build on it too.
And growing, and we're just getting started. It's super early days.
Yeah, for sure.
And 2021 was a very foundational year. Putting the chaos in ChaosNet at times. But overall, just starting, looking back on just this exercise, looking back on this year already, and looking how far we've come is extremely exciting. I'm super excited for 2022. Everything that's happening at the protocol level and everything that's happening at the ecosystem level. So, it's a lot to cover. So, if there are any projects out there who we missed any announcements about, we apologize. But we're not done yet. We have 2 more months to go in this recap, and a lot of ecosystem stuff through November. In fact, November, I'm looking at the list now. It looks like it's like mostly ecosystem stuff that we have here as the ecosystem really comes to life. And so, in the wake of the THORForce 1 Dutch auction, congrats, sir. THORSwap IDOs, November 3rd on THORChain. This is getting us into first week of November. First week of November was action-packed, actually, in the ecosystem. with the THORSwap IDO, the XDeFi IDO on Miso, and THORStarter introducing new THORStarter tiers. It was just a lot going on. And sorry, Cal, I'm gonna take this chunk because this leads up to like my project.
Yeah, go for it.
But THORGuards, my team, completed our sale of our NFT project, and so we were actually, and that occurred. It was actually a 7-day or 5-day sale that started like November 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 7th to 11th, and we were working to coordinate. I remember just how action-packed this period was for the ecosystem because we were coordinating with XDeFi and THORSwap, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't step on one another's toes, that we didn't we spaced out these launches with at least a few days apart to give the community kind of space to react to everything. And then also at the same time, this was right, like ETH trading, like because how THORSwap was conducting their IDO, like they were dependent also on ETH trading going back online on THORChain, which happened at the end of October. And so there were a few different moving parts here. It was like ETH trading needed to get re-enabled. THORSwap was going to do its IDO immediately after, and then we were going to do our IDO after THORSwap. And yeah, both were super successful. The THORSwap IDO, XDeFi IDO, and then our THORGuard token sale, public sale was all went really strong, and we're excited to have these ecosystem projects out there live and building for the community. So it was a good start to November for us.
I was actually super excited to see THORGuards launch personally because I remember you kind of showed me a couple of the images that you were working on, and I was just like, oh, this is like one of the best NFT projects I've ever seen. Like, I just love the graphics. It's like so well done, so well illustrated. I was super excited for it to get launched.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually, the three of us all had a chance to meet in person right before that. Actually, like right around Halloween.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we there was NFT NYC and FamiliarCow and Chad and I we were able to host a big dinner for the community and I had a chance to all get together and connect over some steak. So thank you for the kind words and for supporting that and it was a good start to November and a great way to close out the year here. So Cal, that takes us into mid-November.
Yeah, so mid-November, might remember there was a consensus failure on the network. We were down for a couple of days. So so what exactly happened with the consensus failure? What was that? It resumed on the 18th.
Yeah. So the bug is actually kind of funny because it only happened because of a very edge case scenario that we would never have seen in single chain chaos, not because we never deleted pools at all, and that actually ended up being a problem for single chain because we just ended up having a bunch of like standby pools, like very little assets that are just costing the network computational resources to maintain them and secure them, but not have offer any value to the network itself. And so we made a determination in multi-chain to start like kind of pushing out junk pools that aren't really doing anything. And so the act of doing so, we actually caused a scenario where like the network had a slightly different idea. Each node had a slightly different idea of what the state was. And that's why it came to this consensus failure. So the network just kind of paused and halted until it could be resolved. But it took we fixed the actual bug itself within a couple hours. That was relatively speaking the easy part. The harder part was trying to figure out how to resolve the network, how to undo the consensus failure. And so we were working with the Cosmos team, and they're actually building a tool just for this exact purpose, but it hadn't been completed. It only been like half completed. And so we tried to actually completing the other half for them, but then that became more problematic and more of a headache than we thought it was going to be, so we couldn't do that either. So we really had to spend some time in the mud in a sense to try to unwind some aspects of Cosmos itself. And so we worked with the team a little bit to get that done. And in the end, with Nine Realms assistance, the core team was able to get things restarted and running again and all that kind of stuff. So now we had that in our kind of back pocket if we ever needed it again. I don't think we will, obviously, but it's good to have the information there just in case.
Yeah, awesome. And then the next thing on this is November 23rd, the THORChain's DAO releases their season 1 trophies. So that's an initiative by the THORSwap team. It's their they have a DAO, THORChain's DAO, and they put out their first trophies if you had a high THORChain score. So I'm sure there's some THORChain's DAO NFT holders here. So congrats if you got a THORChain's DAO NFT. And that leads us to November 30th, where THORChain shards the Asgard vault. So that's a pretty big step towards growing the network node-wise.
Yes, for sure. So that was one of the changes we made for multi-chain that we didn't have in single chain. Single chain had like a limit of I think it was 36 nodes total possible on that network, and that's largely because the more members in a threshold signature like wallet or an Asgard vault, as we call it. You have a quadratic relationship to how much time it takes to sign a transaction. And so it was about 15 seconds or so for the 36 nodes. But if you go to 37 or 38, you start seeing an exponential climb, in a literal sense, exponential climb. And so you really can't have like 100 nodes in one TSS kind of group, threshold signature group, because it would take, hours, if not days, to sign a single transaction, which is obviously like untenable. And so the limitation of single chain was we could only go as much as threshold signatures would allow, which is like 36 nodes or so. But we wanted to obviously go higher because the more nodes, the more decentralized the network can be. And so we wanted to kind of remove that limitation. And so we did. So effectively what that does is allow us to have multiple threshold signature wallets. And the group kind of, the group of validators kind of bifurcates into different little smaller groups to each create their own Asgard vault and secure funds that way. And so that basically shards out, or similar to what ETH talks about, ETH 2.0 about sharding the network, we sharded the vaults. And so that allows us for threshold signatures to no longer be the bottleneck of the decentralization of the network. Now the bottleneck is like basically how much network nodes that Cosmos itself can take or Tendermint can take, which I think is around like 250 right now. That'll probably increase over time too as they make improvements into that protocol. But about 250 nodes or so.
Would that 250 be like full validator nodes, or would be the entire maximum for nodes? Like if we were to include like future plans for like vault node sort of things?
Yes, so there are 250 full validator nodes, and then the vault nodes or the light nodes, that's a completely separate concept, and there's actually no upward bound on how many of those can exist in the network. Those can be, you could have 10,000 if you wanted to. And we're designing it in a way to make it efficient, computationally efficient on the network so that we can maintain as many of those as people want to basically make.
Wow,
which allows
that's actually awesome.
To scale the bond of the network, to have no cap. You go as high as people want to, contribute room to. So that's part of the goal of light nodes is to make as many people to be a contributor to the bond side who want to be a contributor to the bond side, so that can grow as high as the community needs it to grow.
Cool, awesome. So on the THORChain side, sorry, excuse me, scratchy throat. All right, so that's end of November, and then that we round the corner into the last month here of the year, December. A couple things happening on the ecosystem side, a couple things happening on the protocol side. So, Cal, I'll take the ecosystem side, and then you can close it out with the protocol side. So, just on the ecosystem side, THORSwap partnered with Olympus DAO, and the Thor Wallet iOS app was made available in the US. So that was December 8th and December 20th, respectively. And really cool seeing Thor Wallet in particular, go live on iOS. For anybody that hasn't checked it out, definitely go download the Thor Wallet app. And it's great, the dream of multi-chain, cross-chain swaps, and liquidity provision all in your, on a beautiful iOS device or iOS app, is alive and well. So check that out. And Thor Wallet also completed their IDO here in December as well, and is going well. So ecosystem looking good, and on the protocol, a couple things in December.
Yeah, the protocol, one of the most exciting things that we've seen since like the chain came back online, really is StageNet launching, which will let us get more chains on the network quicker. It's a better testing environment. So, yeah, Chad, what's up with StageNet? How's that looking?
Yeah, so originally we weren't going to have a StageNet. We were just going to do everything in testnet when we wanted to, try out new chain support for, Terra, for example, or what have you. But our testnet has been so flaky in part because, like, I don't know why. I was just kind of surprised to find this, but so many projects out there, even like big projects, not even the small ones, like they're such unreliable to like run their testnet like chains. Like BNB testnet just went off like we just lost all peers for like a day or something like this, just like yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was. Like, and like Litecoin, like nobody mines a block for like 6 days or something like this. Like it's just like this, it's just like this like wacky scenario where like you have to deal with like added chaos that has no relationship to reality, to like how things would actually be, in a real mainnet scenario. And so it just becomes really problematic. And then we always had to struggle to find testnet assets for all these different chains. And it just became like such a problem. And so the people over at Shapeshift were talking to us once, and they were just like, we don't even use a testnet. We just test on mainnet because testnets are so unreliable. And they just like put you through an added difficulty without any real like reward or return on that added difficulty. Like you don't actually harden your system that much more. And so it's just like we ended up saying like, screw this, let's just create another mainnet that's not mainnet, it's StageNet, and then we'll run all the nodes. So it's not going to be like a decentralized system, which is fine just for testing, it's not for like actual, money to be, thrown through. So that we can easily acquire assets. We can easily just run them, try out Terra or whatever without having too much struggle or problems with like all this Tesla stuff. So that was really kind of the motivation behind all this, just because Tesla's such like an unreliable little bitch that you can't really do much with it, to be honest with you. And so we built an entire new network called StageNet, which is mostly run by 9ROMs at this point. And so that's going to be the kind of the playground, the sandbox to try out, mostly around changes around adding new chains. And so once we start adding new chains like Terra and Atom and Doge, all these things, like I think we're going to start busting out chains like crazy, just because a lot of chains out there are just duplicates of chains that already exist. And so by expanding our set of chains we do support, we have access to so many more that we can just like throw in rather easily, right? So I think 2022 is going to be this like massive explosion within the THORChain ecosystem, because we're going to see so much new additions and so much added value, either be THORFi or expanding the number of chains and communities that interface and connect with THORChain. It's just going to be like it's going to be like super gargantuan. People don't even know what's going to happen. Like most of the community can barely even understand the idea that we're supporting Bitcoin, let alone Luna and like THORFi and lending and like Thor savings. Like it's just going to blow everybody's dicks off effectively.
Chad.
Yeah, that's a phrase.
Hilarious. I love it.
It's crazy too, because when those other ecosystems see that they can use THORChain as like part of their community, basically it's like an add-on to their own value add, you know what I mean? So like if you hold Luna, then you're like, oh wait, I can then swap it straight for Bitcoin without having to go through like whatever kind of like router, you know what I mean, like all the bridges and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is going to be so important as we add more chains into the network, whether it be Luna or Atom or Doge or whatever. Like those communities are going to become advocates of THORChain, right? Because we are supporting their ecosystem, we are supporting their assets, which they're all Doge maxis or whatever, right? And so like they're going to become advocates naturally of THORChain, and then by committing their capital to the pools or doing swaps or whatever, they're just adding more value to this ecosystem, right? They're just creating more buy pressure for the root asset. You're adding more, making the pools deeper. They're increasing the yield on the pools. Like they're doing all of this on our behalf, and they're doing it just through the natural way. And they're doing it because they want to support their own ecosystem, their own asset. And so it's such a natural thing that as we add these other chains and these these huge communities, the THORChain community is naturally going to expand as part of that, and that's just going to be really bullish for the project for sure.
Yeah, because THORChain adds to the value of their project too. So it's only natural that all the communities will support each other in that way as their chain gets added, that's just going to be awesome. Once all the major chains are added, the economically significant chains with strong communities, that just makes us stronger.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to THORChain the other day, and we were chatting about the idea of there's a website called I think it's bridge.terra.money that people use to switch. And I was talking to them about getting that interfaced with THORChain, right? And so you'll be able to go to bridge.terra.money and be able to interface, and do a Bitcoin pair and swap Bitcoin for Terra and all these kind of things. So even these communities, I think, will adapt to THORChain and pull in our functionality, because all of a sudden their bridge that their community uses, their swapping mechanism they use, they're going to be interfacing with our system and just drive more trading and more volume.
That's amazing.
THORChain, that's huge. That's huge, and it's completely normal to them, because to them it's hey, would I want to have a Bitcoin pair with Luna? Fuck yeah! Obviously, right? And
1,000%.
1,000%. What idiot would say I don't want a Bitcoin pair with my asset? That's obviously ludicrous. And so they're all going to want it, because hey, you can swap Bitcoin for my asset, whatever my asset might be, and it's going to be obviously heavily demanded. And so people are going to their communities are going to build interfaces into THORChain. Whether or not those communities even understand that that's actually happening, they're just going to show up one day to bridge that Terra money, and they're going to find Bitcoin as one of the options all of a sudden for swapping to Terra or UST or whatever, and they're oh great, I can go to UST to ETH or to Bitcoin or to whatever other assets, Sol, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And that's going to be super super bullish for the entire ecosystem.
They could build that. I mean, there's bridge.terra.money. I use that often, take assets from Terra to Ethereum or BSC or Harmony as well. And then also, I mean, even inside the Terra Station wallet, there's a swapping feature that lets you swap within the Terra ecosystem. Maybe they could open that up theoretically to, no, because they have to support multiple assets in that, but so I digress.
Yeah, I think that's going the way of the dinosaur. That the Terra Station, I think, is being retired in the long term, the next 6 months or something like this. And so I think bridge.terra.money is it's going to become the main thing.
And all that to say, we know that THORChain is a huge fan of the THORChain ecosystem, and this is something we had covered on or he did an interview on Kevin Rose's Modern Finance, and we pulled a segment of that on for Runebase. But yeah, he's a huge supporter, and it'll be obviously the THORChain ecosystem and the Terra ecosystem are very close siblings, I'd say, and there's a lot of mutual fans of both.
For sure.
So we are very excited to see that. I think Rune and Luna are just side by side in a lot of our eyes. So
yeah, we're both Cosmos chains, and we're both pushing on this idea that DeFi does not necessarily have to live on Ethereum. DeFi is mostly on Ethereum today because it's really your only choice for the last 2 years. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You really could. Wasn't really much other option to build your own DeFi protocol other than Ethereum for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But now that's changed with Cosmos, and so I think even Terra has more TVL than most, if not all, Ethereum smart contracts out there, and it's kind of proving the point that that the future of DeFi is going to be much more diverse than it is today, and I think we're both kind of advocating for this Terra as well as THORChain, so we're kind of support each other naturally because of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that takes us right up to the end of the year here, December 22nd. So just about a little over a week ago, THORChain executes a router v3 upgrade. Yeah. Chad, you want to give a little final color to that before we close out here?
Yeah, the v3 upgrade was just the last component. After doing all the kind of audits we did from the summer, and making all these kind of security minded changes. The router went through its own kind of auditing process, and there were a couple things to kind of clean up on. Nothing like too big or too sexy. Just kind of iron out some crinkles in the code, and I think that'll probably be the last update we'll do to the router for the foreseeable future. I don't really see us needing to do anything else. It's very, very simple in its design, intentionally so. It's designed to be as simple and as dumb as possible, just to keep its surface area as small as possible. So I really doubt we'll actually change it again, to be honest with you, unless we do some new features of functionality. The only reason why I can see us making a change possibly is to be more compatible with and being more composable with the rest of the Ethereum community, in an effort to make it easier for SushiSwap, for example, to like interface with THORChain and allow for like Bitcoin trading on Sushi using THORChain as the kind of the back end. There's some code changes we can probably do to make it a little bit easier for them to implement that. But other than that, I can't see us making any serious changes to that any further, to be honest.
And we also got Doge added to the StageNet, correct? Like that just happened like the other day.
Yeah, it's true. We just got Doge going. We actually wrote the code for Doge, like I think right before we launched multi-chain, and there was the debate at the time of like, should we throw Doge in there or not? We're like, no, 5 chains is good to start. Let's not like get too overzealous and go for a 6th. So the code's been done for a long period of time. We just haven't prioritized the idea of expanding the chain and adding more chains because we were so focused on, well, we have 5 chains already. We're slowly scaling up security. Let's, harden the code. Let's mature the network. Blah blah blah. All these things that are actually critically important. They're not very sexy per se of like securing the network, but they are critically important things we have to get done. Right. So most of this year has been around just about maturity, about hardening, about security, and all these things, and not a whole lot of the work has been done to like expand it into new features and functionality. That's what 2022 is going to be largely about: is expanding into new things, adding more chains, adding more THORify synthetics, getting Thor names actually launched, and running. Like all those things are going to happen this year, I think. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome. So actually, to close out, I mean, you touched on exactly what I was going to like. I have some fun little questions, like end of year wrap up questions here. We can all answer. So first, Chad, what would you, looking back on everything, biggest win of 2021?
Biggest win of 2021. I mean, to me, it's delivering the white paper. It is launching multi-chain. Like that was obviously the biggest thing, but that was the biggest moment in my head. Once we got out there and seen the response from the community, I learned 2 things. One is that everybody in the community that like is a somebody, right? Like that are like massive individuals within the industry who run companies or like have done something, right? Like they're all massive supporters of the project. Like people like Do Kwon and Eric Voorhees and Andre Conje and like people who are actually know what the hell they're talking about are all massive supporters. But at the same time, I've noticed that it's like to get the on-ramp of like the rest of the crypto was actually more difficult than I thought. I thought like, hey, the merits of the chain will be enough, and that will just drive, a lot more adoption quicker. And I was actually completely wrong about that. There's people are in camps, people are tribal, people are, narrowly scoped vision, all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, okay, that's going to be a little bit of a longer ramp than I thought it was going to be, for people to understand what this is, how significant it is, how it reshapes crypto, how it critically is important as a basic infrastructure that the entire ecosystem needs. That's going to be a longer. It's easy to people who understand this space got it instantly and are full supporters of it. And the people that are taking a lot more time to understand it are taking a lot more time to understand it. But they'll get it eventually. They almost have to. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like the first time you learn about Bitcoin, you might kind of laugh at it or kind of joke about it, whatever. But then the more you learn about it, you have to break through that ice. And the more you learn about it, the deeper you understand, how significant it is.
Well,
Thing is,
there's
I think a
all
lot of people think it's a zero sum game where it's like my chain, like my like I want to make the most money. I put everything into Litecoin, because I'm just that guy, and therefore everything else is vaporware. But with THORChain, everyone can win. You could earn money lending out your Litecoin basically, and then you basically win off of having Litecoin because other people want to participate in other ecosystems as well. So it becomes more than a zero sum game.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and actually, Chad, to your point about they'll get it eventually because they have to. More than Bitcoin, I think THORChain will succeed and can succeed with actually nobody knowing, like very few people knowing that they're even using THORChain, right? Because it's underpinning different dexes or swapping interfaces or or yield opportunities. So someone theoretically could be using DeFi spot or broker and then getting yield on assets that they don't necessarily have to know that where those funds are going and that yield is being generated in the THORChain network.
That's probably going to be the vast majority of people that use the network will have no idea if they're actually using the network. Right. Yeah. And therefore you don't have to convince those people or even explain to them what THORChain is and why it's amazing, blah, 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 blah. All they know is like, oh, I went to bridge a Terra money and I can trade my Bitcoin for Luna or vice versa. And they get excited and they just kind of do it. And then meanwhile, they produce yield for the people in the Bitcoin pool and people in the Luna pool. And everybody, in the community is happy for it. And, it effectively creates, buy pressure on the Rune asset. So that's what's going to happen in the end. We don't need to convince the community of the merits of THORChain. My dog. We don't need to convince the community of the merits of THORChain necessarily. We just need to convince the smart people to build it into the Terra Bridge, for example, or Shapeshift, for example, or other things that are being
Trust
discussed.
Wallet, etc.
Trust Wallet, Exodus Wallet, Ledger, all these things. We usually get those people to adopt it, and by doing so, just massive quantities of liquidity just naturally just come through the network.
Good to know. So maybe a KPI to track for 2022 will be interface developer integrations, like interface integrations. Good to know. All right, awesome. So biggest win of 2021, check. Biggest challenge of 2021 and why you're grateful for it.
Biggest challenge was, I think definitely the kind of those incidents we had in the summer were very challenging. They were very stressful. They were very, overwhelming in many respects. It was a dark time in the community for sure. Caused a lot of people to kind of, have questions or doubt or kind of, so hands kind of started to shake a bit in a sense, and reasonably so. I can understand why a person might feel that way, So that took a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of, continuously working for hours on end, multiple teams coming together. That was definitely the most challenging time. But I knew at that time that these challenges we were having weren't fundamental problems with the design or the network itself. It's just there's some things to iron out. And that gave me a lot of confidence that, that we are still on the right track, that we still have the right design, that we're still, everything is from the fundamentals perspective, everything is still very strong. And as we went along and we, had more, bugs and issues in the code base, these things became increasingly edge case scenarios or increasingly rare or increasingly, and that kind of further proved to me that the network is maturing. The network's getting, it's ironing out kind of these kind of edge cases. And every time we hit one of these things, we just fix it and we move on. But still, we have made no fundamental changes to the actual network itself. The original design is still there, and it has not been changed in the least. It's still there, which proves to me that we always had the right vision, we always had the right path, we always had the right architecture, and we just need to harden the code. It just takes a lot more time for THORChain to do that than it does for most of the projects in the space. Layer ones are obviously a lot harder to build than a smart contract, for obvious reasons. So that was definitely a dark time, and I'm sure there's dark times ahead of us, right? We're going to have moments where people are going to be upset about X, Y, or Z, whatever, and it's always going to be a roller coaster, for sure. and I'm looking forward to it. But all those things we had those instances we had in the summer, especially, like those are all learning opportunities. And we actually, because of those things, we built out a better and stronger team. We built up a better and stronger code base that's much more defensive in its nature, and it has more blanketed protections, so we don't have to find every possible exploit. The network itself has these blanket protections that will do a very good job for the most part of protecting almost situations we can't protect, or situations we can't foresee. And then we building out the team and building THORSec and like all these other things, having a relationship with Mutify to have a bug bounty so we can incentivize people, white hats to come involved more often. And even if you're a black hat, the way we did the scheduled outbounds thing changes the economics of, like, it's more profitable now to be a white hat and attack the network in a white hat perspective than it is to be a black hat and steal funds. You'll actually make more money as a white hat than you would a black hat, right? And so the change in those economics just kind of puts us in a much better and stronger position. And so from a fundamentals perspective, we're in a better position now than the project has ever been in its history. And as we go further into 2022, we start launching Luna and UST and Atom and Doge and Sol and Polkadot and whatever else is coming down. Oh, and then we have these like Thor savings and fixed rate income and lending and cross chain this and like no liquidations on lending. Like all these things that people haven't even thought of or people think is impossible. We actually have some ideas and plans, which we'll share with the community in the next few weeks. But there's some massive things happening downstream. But we need to get through the difficult parts first and the challenging aspects to get to where we are now. And because of that, we are in a much stronger position from a fundamentals perspective.
Powerful. Love it. That's inspiring and a great note to sign off here on. Cal, do you have anything else to close with?
No, man, I just love hearing Chad speak. So that's all I wanted to hear.
I'm ready. I'm still basking in the glory of the potential for getting my dick blown off. It's so funny. I'm like fuck yeah. Let's do it. Let's live in that world. Yeah, Chad. Appreciate you and you on behalf of the entire core team and ecosystem and Nine Realms and THORSec. We appreciate all the efforts and energy that went into building out this platform over the last year, and we as a community are all very, very excited to watch it grow and to support where we can over the next year. 2022, we are all looking forward to a really big year. So yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Cow. Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year, everybody listening.
Happy New Year, guys.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you all. The recording, we recorded this. It'll be available on rebase.org, and we'll be back next year for a look forward to what's coming in 2022.